Let's now speak with the independent statistician and the political commentator, Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. And apologies for the pregnant pause there. I was expecting Kemi Badenoch to hove into view. Silly me. You've done some stats on this. You always do. You cut straight to the chase. And I want to ask you a straight question. All the gloss in the world from the Chancellor this morning. Actually, are we already in recession?
Well, so let's first explain what a recession is. What that normally is, Martin, is you get two consecutive quarters of negative growth. So the GDP figures today, what they are is basically you add up all of the value of the goods and services in the economy, and that gives you the value of the economy. And so the headline figures have gone up in the last quarter by 0.1%, and they went up by 0.1% in the previous quarter. But at the time, this definition of a recession has kind of been in force for many, many decades. But when you've got significant immigration, which is what we've seen in recent years in the UK, much, much higher than what we had, say, during the 80s and in the 1990s, that probably a better measure, which Rachel Reeves, the clip you just presented there, talked about, was GDP per capita, or another way of thinking of it is GDP per head, per person. And if we look at those figures, Martin, what we've actually seen then is if we look at the last two quarters, we've actually seen a decline of 0.1% in the quarter, basically ending in December, and a decline in the quarter before as well. So two consecutive declines in GDP per head technically means, if we look at it on a per person basis, yes, we are technically in a recession on that basis.
And we saw the leaked messages from Wes Streeting. This government has no growth strategy. Jamie, when you look at the figures before us today, do you think he's got a point?
Well, the reason we're in the problem and the pickle that we're currently in is because of the taxes that are going up. Again, the clip you shared there of Rachel Reeves talks about putting more money in people's pockets. Well, they're taxing people and taking money out of people's pockets. That has a detrimental impact on basically the spending. And the very poor economic figures that we are seeing, they're being propped up by government borrowing. We'll have new figures out next week on government borrowing. In the public sector, we're seeing the growth there in terms of jobs and pay. So that's unsustainable in the long term. And she champions the fact that interest rates are coming down. Well, I wouldn't put that down to government policy. Obviously, the Bank of England run the interest rates, but they're generally just following what's going on globally, looking at the US. And she talks about inflation and the cost of living is coming down. Well, we're above France, we're above Germany, we're above the US, we're above China. So there's not real, the shoots of recovery aren't there. The figures are looking pretty dire. And Martin, the problem we've got is I'm coming on with you, every time we get these new set of economic figures, we've been talking for several months on this now. There's no turnaround happening. And I think I agree with Wes Streeting. There's no strategy. And I think the government's in paralysis mode at the moment with all of the kind of the sleaze and the scandals and the misjudgment of Keir Starmer. So they're not even focusing on the economy at the moment. And that's ultimately what the public want to get fixed.
Jamie, when you delve into some other figures as well, there's some concerning trends around construction. Construction is down by 2.1%. That's the worst performance in 4 years. But I thought this was the government that said they were going to build, baby, build. Nothing's happening, mate.
No, and the good thing with construction, if we've got housing shortages and we need to basically get young people on the ladder, why the government doesn't start getting the construction sector going itself? Because if the government helps build things, it's an asset for the government as well, and it'll go on the balance sheet from that. And construction declining is in part because if the housing market is in kind of a bit of a slump, then construction will obviously have an impact there. Businesses are not investing, so there'll be an impact on construction there as well. So the figures today, Martin, they're not great. They're obviously pretty dire if you're looking at it from a GDP per head perspective. And I think that's pretty much the only commentator I can see at the moment who's really homing in on the fact that technically, if you're looking at it from that basis, we are in a recession. And we don't have too much doom and gloom because you can talk yourself into worse and worse economic figures. But what the government needs to do to boost confidence is pretty much get taxes down. I think that's only going to happen when Starmer's gone. Reeves will go with her, and maybe a new broom of politicians coming in at the top of the Labour Party might reverse some of the things that have gone on.
And I wonder, actually, if all this uncontrolled immigration, which we were told will boost the economy, if the GDP per head is going down, perhaps that was an illusion all along. Jamie Jenkins, superb. Stats of the Nation is your Substack. Superb. Give it a follow, folks, who are watching at home. Thank you, Jamie. Always an absolute pleasure to have on the show. Thank you very much.